Hey everybody, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses. Tonight we are going to talk about a whole number of things, but most importantly, let's get to the panel. First, we have, as always, pretty much lately, we have Mr. Hockey Jerk. Mr. Hockey Jerk, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm fine, but I'm not the important one here.
No, this is true. Neither of us are important compared to this gentleman right here who has decided to join us today, and he will also be on tomorrow as we really go more deep into the draft tomorrow. We will talk a little bit tonight about the draft, but tomorrow is when we're really going to break it down. You know him, you love him, Mr. Zach Devine.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How is everybody? Everyone good? How's everyone feeling right now? Are we on suicide watch? Are we on just kind of blah? You know, maybe a little Prozac would help. How's everyone feeling?
I, for one, am very annoyed. I don't understand the logic in making a safe pick in the first round. For me, I think if you're picking in the first round, and I mean, 19 is not a bad position. I think you have to take the best available player regardless, especially when you're in the Sharks position where, I mean, you could argue that there's a need at forward, but really the organization they're a lot better off than some other teams when it comes to prospects. So I really think the best available player would have been just fine for the Sharks.
Zach, how you feeling?
Yeah, I just still feel like the Sharks left a lot of talent on the table. Norris, for me, is a real safe middle six center on a squad that has that position pretty much locked down. I think this is one of those drafts where you swing for the fences. You had Ellie Tolvanen still on the board, who was my best player available. Vesalainen, kind of was in that range. So if you needed to move around, there are a lot of players that were still there, and I just feel that this was an exceedingly safe pick, a player that probably is there when the Sharks make their second round selection tomorrow.
Yeah. This is the problem I have with this pick, and I'm going to try and do this without swearing because I'm kind of annoyed. But out of respect for Zach, I'm going to try not to swear here. When the season ended, and I said that, maybe it's time that this team needs to consider, what they're going to do in the future as far as Marleau Thornton goes. And of course, the first reaction I got was, well, who do you replace them with? Okay, that's a good point. The problem is, though, and the why I don't understand how so many Sharks fans that I've just come across on social media, no, not all, but a lot of fans they're fine with this pick. And I don't understand, because Thornton and Marleau, yes, you're never going to truly replace them in the system. Like, I get that. Marleau a little bit easier than Thornton. Thornton's a generational player. You can't just get a new one. But you're going to need something. And the Sharks don't have that something in the system right now. So you would think, knowing that, in, let's say, 2 years, they're probably both done in San Jose. Why are you not trying to prepare for that through the draft? That's the part I don't understand. Why are you taking safe players when you need to try and swing for the fences and get some game-breaking talent? Look, I get it. This isn't previous year's drafts. This isn't a year where there's, top guys available, and the Sharks were drafting at 19 anyway. But there was better players on the board, and I don't understand. And there was, players that, yes, maybe they might have a chance of flaming out, but aside from Nikolai Goldobin, when have the Sharks ever swing for the fences and have Goldobin soured them so bad that they're just going to play these safe and then just hope that Doug Wilson can spin a trade? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and especially if we all know the San Jose Sharks love centers. I'm not even sure if they're aware that the wing is a position in the game of hockey, it seems. They take centers and like, oh, you're the center that plays over on this side. And that's fine. But I really feel like the Kailer Yamamoto pick, that's going to be what really is going to haunt the Sharks. Yamamoto is one of the few players in this draft that I felt could really play with Connor McDavid. I saw him this past summer at the National Junior Evaluation Camp that I seem to always touchdown back to. But he was on a line with Clayton Keller and Kiefer Bellows, and that line was lethal. And I'm a huge fan of Clayton Keller, and he is no Connor McDavid. So that's about to get positively frightening. And then they put, just some guy named Jesse Puljujärvi on the other wing. That's going to be one of those picks. And even if they wanted to stick at center, fine. Okay. Mm-hmm. Robert Thomas was there. Ryan Poehling was there. I'm not as huge on Morgan Frost. Bowers I felt would have been. I think he has a little bit higher offensive upside, maybe just a smidge. But I mean, Tolvanen going 30, that's a steal. Kostin, I had him as a second rounder, but that's a 475-foot home run or it's a bust. But you swing like that in the later stages.
Yeah, I completely agree. Go ahead.
And that's the thing that really bothered me too. Just going back to Yamamoto, for those of you who don't know, I tend to not be upset about things that are out of my control. I'm not the general manager. I don't make those choices. Simple as that. But the Sharks were so starved for offense this past year, and they're going to be starved for offense next year too. And they have the highest scoring forward basically available, and they're like, oh, no, we're fine. Let's take the sturdy two-way center who's a strong skater and a physical presence. I just don't get it. It's like there's a need, there's a solution, but, 2 + 2 = 5 somehow. I don't get it, Yeah,
and especially you've got all those centers, and you've got you have the Rourke Chartiers, you have the Dylan Gambrels, even Danny O'Regan. I don't think he's a number one center at the next level. He might even get moved over to the wing. But you've got some talent in the pipeline at center. Why don't you go best player available who happens to be a wing? Tolvanen, I've heard all kinds of different things. I heard his interviews where he kind of came off as maybe a little bit of a prima donna, a little bit with an attitude. But I really don't know too many super humble natural goal scorers. You know, that's if you're going to be a sniper, you're going to have an attitude, you're going to have a swagger, you're going to know when the puck's on your stick, it's got a good chance of going in, and you need that.
How much did the admission issue with the NCAA play into that fall, do you think?
I don't know how much algebra is going to be in the AHL or NHL next year, but that doesn't play into me. These are hockey players. This is what these young men have, especially the first rounders.
Right.
This is what has consumed them. You're drafting 17, 18-year-olds. These kids knew they were special probably around 12 or 13. That they were just better than everybody else. Right? So for the last 3 to 5 years, that's all they've done. They've done.
But what if they can't do a chin-up? Then what?
Oh, geez, yes.
Well, the only thing for Tolvanen I would have really taken a look at was his standing high jump, so that way you know just how high the glass needs to be when he scores all those goals.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah,
well, something to add to that, if you're under 6 feet, you're automatically not allowed to play in the NHL, right?
Right. And I had a whole bunch of chirping coming at me about Kailer Yamamoto being my best player available. At that point, Tolvanen actually, but they were in that grouping. They were in that tier for me where it's like, then it just gets down to maybe who you like. I think Tolvanen he's a natural goal scorer. I think with Yamamoto, he's got an underutilized shot, more of a playmaking winger. But 5'8", so what? When you've got that elusiveness, for Yamamoto, the speed that he plays, the creativity with the puck, and then for Tolvanen, you've just got that lethal, best in class, shot. Yamamoto, if he was 6 foot, would have been a top 5 pick. End of subject.
Yep.
Absolutely. You know, and and it's funny because like a lot of people ask me, who's your guy in the draft? Who's your guy? And I'm like, there's a bunch of guys that the Sharks could take and I'd be pretty happy with. And somehow Doug Wilson found the player that annoyed me. Like it was one of those drafts. Like there's so many picks he could have made that would have been fine. Like, like you're saying, you had Tolvanen still on the board. I kind of still liked Vesalainen. I liked,
right.
I like Yamamoto. Like these guys, there were so many guys still on the board that he could have taken. I just can't put into words anymore.
I would also just like to point out, who else was 5'8"? That guy Martin San Louis. I think he did okay.
Yeah.
That Johnny Gaudreau guy seems pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially in the new NHL, and that's something I know I've spoken at length with you gentlemen about. These are all players that you do need a special mix to be a smaller guy. You have to be quick. You have to be elusive. You need to not be afraid. And I saw Yamamoto a number of times live in the last couple of years up at Spokane, and he's not going to be. Nobody's going to confuse him with, say, a Ryan Clough.
Right.
But he doesn't shy away from it either. And he's got a little bit, he plays with a little bit of edge. He's got a bit of an attitude because he knows he's a small guy. He knows he has to stick up for himself. He's got to make it hurt when they inevitably come gunning for him. But, with Norris, you do get some, I would say his NHL certainty is fairly high.
Yeah.
As much as it can be with young players. But I just feel like with this pick, you really select based on ceiling. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the biggest difference is. And, I've read that Doug Wilson compared Norris to Logan Couture.
Which is asinine.
I think it's a stretch for sure. I don't know. I don't see it, and I watch a good bit of the program. There was a lot of players left there, and a defender that I loved, Robin Salo, he's still on there, and that to me is a little bit of a head scratcher. I think he could be one of the best defenders available in this draft.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm curious to see like what happens tomorrow because I think the first round, obviously in a draft like this, you can kind of throw out your mock draft for the most part because there's just so many guys so close together, and then you just look at based on what you need for a player, and then you go, okay, I like this guy, this guy, this guy. Let's see who's on the board when we pick. But I don't know, just frustrated.
I just have a really hard time with Josh Norris being at the top of the table.
Me too. Me too. And I'm not saying Josh Norris is a bad guy. And I want to make sure like everyone's, I want to make sure like I'm not dissing this guy. It's just because I know I was really hard on the Gambrell pick last year and I've kind of come around to it, but I don't know, guys. I mean, maybe I'll come around on this one too, but right now I have no desire to.
I have a couple contacts within the program, and Norris is, as far as checking the character box for the San Jose Sharks, he certainly does. There is no question whatsoever on his desire, his character, works hard. All those pieces are there. It's the quintessential San Jose Shark draft pick. I think the concern that we're all talking about is really what we're seeing in the pipeline, and we talk a lot about the Barracuda. It's not seeing that offensive dynamo that's going to impact the score sheet the way you would hope.
Right. And like I'm scared for the future of this team now. Like I'm genuinely afraid for what happens when Thornton, and mostly Thornton, Marleau too. Like I said, I think Marleau is an elite scorer. I don't think he's generational. But he's at least at one time an elite scorer. Now he's a good scorer, but age is obviously a factor there. I don't know what they're going to do after Joe Thornton's gone. Like this team is going to be in trouble.
And most teams are without a top center.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause again, I'm not sold Logan Couture as a top center. I think he's a great number 2. I think he's a good 1C. I just, man, I don't know. I look around the division and I look at the Sharks and I don't like what the future holds based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, you're going to need somebody to just kind of come out of left field, like a Rudolph Balker's just, hitting that switch.
Yeah, completely blowing away expectations.
Yeah, it's going to take something along those lines, or, and I'm a big Rourke Chartier fan, but I don't see him as a 1C.
No.
I see him as an offensively capable 3C. Realistically, a Marco Sturm type. But that's all. I cannot stand comparables. Drives me nuts. But the more I've seen of Chartier, that one I do like.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll see what happens tomorrow, obviously, and we're going to be back, and we're going to really, probably complain about this for another 20 minutes tomorrow, and then get into everything else. It's been a busy week though, and a lot of trades this morning, and I thought we should talk about the expansion draft a little bit too, because there's a couple things I wanted to touch on there. And then the trades happened this morning, and then I saw the TTG symbol in the sky, and I knew I had to come on, and we had to do this. So let's talk about the expansion draft, because I thought that was an interesting. It was interesting. It made the awards almost watchable. No, not really. The awards are pretty cringeworthy. What did you guys think of the awards show overall before we start this?
The awards are usually cringy every year. I've said for many years, come check out the NHL awards. It's your best chance to see all your favorite D-list celebrities.
It certainly is. Zach, did you watch the awards at all?
I had to miss them, and it sounds that I'm like, from everything I read and what everyone's told me, I'm a better person for it.
Yeah, you are a better person for it.
So I was following along on Twitter the best I could. No super. We all knew the Sharks were going to lose a defender.
Right.
I put forward a couple ideas of maybe how Bodker goes. But with what Vegas was able to do, by the time it came around for the expansion draft, that was impossible.
Right. So what do you guys think of the Vegas team as it stands now? What do you guys? I'm going to start with Hockey Jerk. What did you like? Just let's look at forwards to start. What forward picks did you like? What forward picks made you scratch your head a little bit? And maybe some overall thoughts on the Vegas complete roster to start.
So for me, at least on forward, the names that jump out to me are James Neal. I've always been a fan of James Neal. He has never scored less than 21 goals in 9 NHL seasons. So I wouldn't say he could score 40 goals again. That would be awesome. But I don't think he's a lock to do that. But I still think he's a solid pickup. I really like Cody Eakin. He's a solid, third line center who can slot into the 2C hole if you have an injury or something happens. I think Jonathan Marchessault is an interesting one. The 31 goals, it's very out of left field, and I don't imagine he gets that close again, but it's curious to see what he does, considering that he'll be a pending UFA. He's going to be a pending UFA. And Riley Smith, another good pickup as well through trade. I didn't really understand the which pick was it? I didn't understand the throwaway picks. Vegas really had a chance to, build a really solid team. And some of the picks that they made really just stuck out to me as very questionable, like the Chris Thorburn pick.
That's what I was going to go with too.
You're obviously not keeping him. The person they picked up from Carolina, I believe it was Connor Brickley.
Mm-hmm.
Lee Stepniak was there. I'm a big fan of Lee Stepniak. Somehow consistently scores 20 goals. I don't know. He's one of those guys who just has it going for him. The defense, I am actually a fan of the defense. I think there's a handful of good pieces. McNabb, obviously, Shea Theodore, Nate Schmidt. Engeland, I get it. He's the hometown guy and all, but he was a UFA. Why not just sign him July 1, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Marc-Andre Fleury is a slam dunk, no doubt.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think they're a Stanley Cup team, but I could easily see them come in like 9th place in the West or maybe 10th.
Yeah,
Just, you know, depending on how things fall.
That's kind of my thoughts too. Like I look at this team and I look at the way it was set up, and they could have been good right out of the gate. Like not great, but I think they could have contended at least in the Pacific. I'm not saying they would run away with the Pacific and win the Stanley Cup in their first year, but they had some options. But I mean, it seems like they're really, really hell bent on futures, and I'll get to that in a second. I mean, for me, obviously they took a couple of contracts, which is fine. They took the Grabovski contract, they took the Clarkson contract that netted them a first. And I thought Vegas did pretty well with their first, other than the third pick they made. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it though. I thought their first 2 picks were excellent though. Mark Mathott's not going to be there long. It sounds like he's going to get flipped. Which that's the other thing too, is you look at like some of these names and we don't know who's going to be there next week.
Right.
But like, I know Edmonton, I know they there was really nothing from Edmonton to take, but I look at their goaltending. I think the goaltending is where they really missed, in my opinion, because I don't know. I just feel like they could have done, like, Calvin Pickard's okay. Berube's a UFA, so I don't know if he's sticking around or if he's just if that's just another throwaway pick. But you could have taken. I think Brossoit on Edmonton's an okay prospect, but I mean Griffin Reinhart. Dear God, why? Like, why Griffin Reinhart at this point? I don't understand. Like that was the pick that really got under my skin a lot, because I'm just like, why Griffin Reinhart? Like, if we're all pretty agreed that this guy's pretty much on his way to Bustville. I know, he's what? He's 23 now. I mean, time's running out for Griffin Reinhart, and I haven't seen enough strides to be confident that he's ever going to live up to his draft pedigree.
Yeah, certainly not with Reinhart, and we've talked a lot about him and his time with the Condors. Just does not scream, NHL capable to me. He might be able to slot in there as a 6'7". Clayton Stoner, not bad. I'm with Jerk on this. I feel like, I go a couple ways. I understand taking the defenders, because that's always the hardest thing that every NHL team every season is always looking to get. So you get as many trade pieces as possible. The problem is you trade away some of those key players, like a David Schlemko for a 5th. Penciling out their defense, it's like, I think Schlemko is part of your top 6.
Yep.
Well, and
go ahead.
Something else that stood out to me too is, you look at this roster and it's very easy to tell that they're starved for center depth. Like I don't understand the logic in not taking an Eric Stahl, who had a resurgent year and has a good contract. And then, I mean, I would argue that Eric Haula and Jamie McGinn are more or less around the same player. You could have taken a McGinn from Arizona and have a legit top 6 center in Eric Stahl,
That's, I think, from some teams, like they completely just stole from, like thieves in the night. The Panthers, for example, stole from like thieves in the night. I'd even, although the Islanders made a move today that maybe makes everything make a little more sense. And in the moment, I thought the Islanders got completely stolen from like thieves in the night too. And then I thought Minnesota got off way too easy when you consider they not only have Matt Dumba, but then you have Eric Stahl there. And for me, I completely agree. If you look at, I know we have the Russian fellow coming over who's probably going to be their 1C, but Eric Stahl could easily slide into that 2C spot. They don't have, they're so weak down the middle. It's going to be rough sledding for them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's still early, I mean, there's a lot of time to make trades and make signings, but I really think, if they wanted to, I think somebody in their organization said they felt they could be a Stanley Cup contender within 3 years. Not with this roster.
No.
And expansion draft, entry draft, it's all the same, If you want a good team, you have to swing for the fences.
Yeah, not getting Eric Stahl, that to me was a head scratcher. I had him as exposed. You know, you look at where, especially their forward group, you know, and I think this, to be honest, I feel like it broke kind of as we thought. We thought their defense would be solid, their goaltending would be set, and the forward group would struggle to score goals. And they went about it in kind of a screwy way, but I think that's ultimately where they ended up. You know, I think Fleury's going to be there, you know, for the foreseeable future. Pickard, I'm actually a fan of. I think that he in a grooming role for, you know, a couple years, I think that's exactly what he needs, as opposed to starting 35, 40 games for a terrible Avalanche squad.
That's fair.
You know, behind Fleury, I think he will be able to develop appropriately. Berube to me is a throwaway, and I know a couple Islanders fans totally disagree with me on that. I've never been a Berube guy, so that's there. But you look at what the Sharks have done. The Sharks haven't really drafted goaltending. They're not the worst for it. They found an Aaron Dell. They got Troy Grosnick, you know, who has made strides on his own to kind of turn his career around. Traded for Martin Jones. You know, before that it was Niemi, who was solid, if you know, but not spectacular. But you look around, you know, Antti Ranta. That was a guy a lot of people thought Vegas should have gone after. He was plucked at what, 25, you know, from Europe. Why invest that when you know in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, when Fleury starts winding down, you can just go over to Finland, you can go to the Czech Republic, you can, you know, find. I mean, Martin Jones wasn't even drafted,
right?
And then his first year as a starter brings the Sharks to the Stanley Cup, and certainly not the weakest link on the Sharks roster.
No, not at all.
Why invest much?
No, I you know what, and that makes a ton of sense too. Because you look at, you know, this is something we've said 100 times. There's more goaltenders than spots for goaltenders, period. And that's not changing anytime soon.
Yep.
Jim Nill would disagree with you.
Jim Nill would absolutely disagree with me with his 47 goaltenders.
And they got they got my best goaltender available in Jake Ottinger.
Yeah. That was an interesting pick. I mean, the thing is, I know a lot of people, like, you know, immediately just was like, oh, Dallas needs another goalie. And I know I said it on Twitter too, kind of facetiously, but you know, the thing is, when you look at the goaltending situation, you know, Ben Bishop, we know Ben Bishop's history. Lettinen's gone next year. I'm surprised if Niemi somehow doesn't get bought out before the summer ends. Whenever the next buyout window is, I expect to see Niemi get bought out. You know, eventually though, but they're going to need something in the system because they don't have anything in the system.
Yeah, but with Ottinger, you know, he's over there in BU, big goaltender. He does remind stylistically of Martin Jones. He's not overly athletic, but he's more of a technical goaltender. I talked to him before his draft year as well, and he expected himself to go into BU and win that starting job, and then he just goes out and flat out does it. He's already working with some of the best eye trainers, you know, that specialize in NHL goaltending. So, you know, at the ripe old age of 18, this kid's already putting in the summer work to train his puck tracking skills and all those other pieces. He came out of the program. He was part of the battery with Joseph Wall, who was a Toronto draft pick last year. He was the best goalie available, and it was, to me, it was never a doubt. And yeah, you know, crack all the jokes you want, but at the end of the day, Dallas got the best goalie that was out here.
Yep, absolutely. Could not agree more. So back to Vegas. Obviously, I think Vegas obviously went really heavy into futures more than trying to build a team right now. And at first, I was kind of like, really like, this is kind of a wasted opportunity for them. Do you think that this is a smart way to go, given the opportunity they were given to kind of come out of the gate a little bit heavier than previous expansion teams? Because I feel like they're going to be pretty much on par with previous expansion teams, a little bit better, but not much than expansion teams of days past. Joe, I'll let you go. Oh, go ahead.
No, see, I totally disagree. I think you look at the players that they were able to get. You know, we're not too. You know, they've got a lot of moves to make.
Yes.
You know, there's still free agency to go. A lot of these players are going to move. I really like what Vegas has done, and there were the head scratching moves that we've discussed, but you look at the pieces that they've been able to amass. Mark Mathau is going to get them a pretty penny.
Yep.
That piece alone, who pretty much everyone agrees is that's a trade bait pickup right there. That's going to fetch a lot. And I really like Marcia. Say it for me, hockey jerk, Jonathan
Marchessault.
Thank you. I've been butchering that for years. He's a player that I've liked. I think that he's coming into his own. I think 31 goals might be a little ambitious, but is he a 20-goal scorer? I definitely think so. So can you build out that with, Shipachyov and some of these other guys? And, I think Cody Eakin rebounds. I think Vegas has is much better position than any expansion team ever has been.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, maybe not to. I don't know if they're going to crash out of the gate and plow through the Pacific. I guess my question is though with the way that George McPhee was able to kind of he just had. Yeah, I mean, and he could have been so much worse too. Like he just had like all the GMs just basically wrapped around his finger, like basically bending to his will. Jerk, do you think that when the NHL goes through this again, let it be Seattle or whatever, do you think that this will be the same thing that happens again, or do you think they will change it?
I don't know. It's hard to say because on one hand, some of the GMs who kind of make questionable decisions deserve to have, basically their nuts in someone else's hand, for lack of a better expression. But at the same time, I feel like, George McPhee, to a certain extent, kind of, how do I say this? Like, almost was over cocky in certain situations. He's like, oh, yeah, just give us, 18,000 first-round picks, and we'll take that guy, no problem. Like, I just don't know. I imagine the NHL would try and add more restrictions to the expansion considerations category, but I mean, I don't know. Beyond that, I don't really think George McPhee did anything, wrong or bad for the sport.
What do you think, Zach? Any thoughts on that before I go on it?
I think it's important to remember that they paid $500 million.
Yes.
And for $500 million, that you could buy a whole lot of my moral my moral compass.
That's a very good point.
As far as to me, I think Bettman has learned his lesson when you hamstring some of these expansion teams in non-traditional markets. I think Atlanta, showing, I think that the NHL has figured out the expansion formula that you have to have a team that truly has a chance to win every night out of the gate, because winning solves a lot of problems. And when you're trying to lay down roots, that's about the only problem you've got. I think that they keep it this way. I don't mind that the teams have to finagle around, and if they've got bad contracts or they're not managing their rosters appropriately, that's on them. And I think Doug Wilson doesn't get nearly enough credit for his multi-year planning for this moment. To only lose David Schlemko, that's key.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that we all said too when Schlemko got signed. It was like, yeah, this is a good pick. It's a good pickup. It should help on the D line, but it's also expansion protection. Mm-hmm. I think that's something we all said at the time when he was signed. So, only losing Schlemko, I don't think it's a huge deal for the Sharks. And you know what? I agree that sometimes maybe, McPhee was a little cocky, but honestly, these guys are supposed to be competing against each other. I understand that hockey, you're going to be friends with people and stuff, but this is the same league that has offer sheets that rarely get used because no one wants to upset someone, no one wants to upset someone else's buddy. Like, to me, I want more of that in the NHL. I want these guys to be completely cutthroat and build the best team they can. That's what they should be doing. That's what they're hired to do. If they can offer sheet a team and really put them in a compromising position, they should do it every time.
Yeah, and you know what? Zach brings up a really good point too about, putting a team in a non-traditional market and wanting them to look good. But I fear that when you continue that trend, you start to cross over into the territory of you could easily say, well, the NHL is doing everything they can to make Vegas be a good team, and it's not fair to the other teams. You could bust out that tinfoil hat.
Oh,
so
forget that.
I could see from that spectrum of things, why the NHL might want to nerf some of the expansion rules and tendencies and stuff like that. But like you said, at the same time, if you have your foot on their throat, step down. Simple as that,
Yeah.
Especially after paying $500 million for the privilege thereof.
That's
exactly.
The thing. Yeah. I mean, and like I said, I was kind of like, at first I'm like, man, Vegas didn't really do so well in the expansion draft, but now, when I saw the picks tonight and just like, the players that they picked, it's hard to really fault them. Like, this team's going to be scary.
Yeah.
And it's going to be scary relatively quick. They got some really good players tonight. I can't remember their third pick. I didn't love it, but again, it wasn't the worst pick they could have made.
Brandstrom.
Yeah, Brandstrom. I didn't love the pick, but it wasn't drafting
Josh Norris
at 19.
Yeah, Brandstrom is one of those guys. My editor, Brian Fogarty, over at hockeyprofits.com, he loves him. That was the one player that he and I had some serious philosophical differences. I think that's a polite way to put that. So bit of a polarizing pick, but really good puck mover. I liked Henry Yokoharu, his ability to be the kind of that type of player a little bit more, but a lot of people were pretty high on him. I think that it was a bit of a reach on him, but hey, if you like him, he's
right.
Yeah, once you got past pretty much 13, 14 for me, it really turned into just, what's your favorite flavor?
Right.
But, that's a player. Suzuki is a guy, the plays just follow him around. Mm-hmm. He's one of those players that just seems to always be in the right spot, making the right decision. There's no question about his back strength because he carried Owen Sound all year long.
Yeah.
So he's got a good, strong back on him. No future back problems. And Cody Glass, I think the sky's the limit for him. He has the potential for an honest to God franchise 1C. Smart young man. Really has grown. Last season for the Winterhawks, Dominic Turgeon went down with an injury, and they moved Glass up to the first line against Everett, and he looked outclassed. And the strides he made all season long up through the end, well deserving of that number 6 pick. He's gonna be their 1C in the not so distant future.
Yeah.
So my question for you then, does Glass play in Vegas this coming year?
No. 100% no. He has to fill out. He's going to be a huge piece of Portland moving forward under Mike Johnston. They were a team. I thought they were a bit surprising. They got into the playoffs, made some noise, made it to the second round. I think that was they overachieved, but they've got the pieces. Yokoharu's going to come back. They got some questions in goal up in Portland, I think, but they've got a lot of good young players. Skylar McKenzie, that's an overager that the Sharks probably are going to pass on because he's little and talented. But there's certainly some pieces there in Portland, and I don't think there's any reason to rush Glass. Let him be the guy. And you've got to let these players develop that confidence. Let them dominate. Let them get used to what it feels like to being the guy. Because you're not bringing Cody Glass in to be a 2 or 3 center. You're bringing him in to be the man in Vegas on the top line. Let him take the appropriate steps to get there.
Completely agree.
And Jay Clark, real quick, just said Morgan Geekie is worth a look. I totally agree at 49. I have Geekie in my top. I think he's 30-something on my list. But, yeah, Morgan Geekie's an overager. Bad skater, but needs attention there for sure. Puck follows him around. I loved him with Tri-City. Player that just seems to be able to make plays despite his skating.
So obviously we talked about Schlemko obviously being gone. So what do the Sharks do now? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I think it's worth asking just for the sake of good airtime. So what do the Sharks do, Zach? What are we going to do?
Dylan DeMello takes his rightful place next, and he's a right-handed shot. See what I did there?
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Next to Brendan Dillon. That was a good pairing. 2 years ago, I thought they were more than capable. I think they're complementary styles. DeMello has paid his dues to this organization in spades. He's ready to be, a 5'6" guy. Slightly surprised Vegas didn't take him. He can run a power play. You got contract certainty with him. That would have been an interesting pick for down the road.
Were you surprised that Schlemko over Dylan?
No, because the same reason I thought Dylan would or Schlemko would be protected is that contract is just value.
Yeah.
For getting a good puck possession defender at $2.1 million for the next 3 years, and that's worth 2.1 right there. Not even with the player.
Yeah.
That's in today's cap world, especially with the cap. It sounds like not going up much. Getting a value 5'6" that can contribute like that, it's a hell of a get.
Jerk, what do you think?
Yeah, I just want to say for the record that I had Vegas taking DeMello, so I'm glad that Zach thinks that that's an interesting concept. But you know what? I agree 100%. I think Dylan DeMello has paid his dues over the last year and a half. I don't know. I think that he would have been fine in that 6th spot the year the Sharks went to the Stanley Cup final. I don't think they needed Polak, but I mean, at the same time, you never know with injury or anything like that.
Sure.
So I think DeMello slots right in, but then it kind of creates, some more questions because I'm also in the belief that Tim Heed is too good to be a 7th defenseman. I think Tim Heed could easily be on that bottom pair with Brendan Dillon as well, and I think Heed and DeMello both have the ability to run a second power play unit, and they're both really fluid skaters and really smart with the puck, and they check a lot of the right boxes for a 5'6" defenseman.
That's kind of where I'm at too, and I know me and Zach already have a little side bet going here because I really like what I saw from Tim Heed last year, and I agree. I think he was, if he could have, I'm surprised, he's still here obviously because he was an RFA, but I mean, this is a guy who, had he been a UFA, could probably have gotten an NHL job elsewhere. So I like Dylan DeMello. This isn't a slight on Dylan DeMello. I just, I think it's going to be a very interesting competition in camp to see who comes out with that spot. And I don't necessarily agree that it's Dylan DeMello's to take. I wouldn't be upset if he took it. I don't think it's necessarily his set in stone.
Mm-hmm. You know what I would really like to see the Sharks do, especially with, Braun and Vlasic get a lot of heavy minutes. Paul Martin is not young.
No.
They've got some pieces. And you see this in basketball where you're going to rotate guys, get some rest, manage minutes. Why not go with 7 defenders and get them on rotation? You see it all the time in baseball, right? Some guy's like, hey, Buster Posey, it's his day off. Why? Because it's a long damn season. And yes, the baseball season's longer than hockey. Hockey's a tad bit more physical, just a touch.
Just a tad.
Yeah, smidge. I think if we were measuring it, it'd officially be a smidge.
Not a skosh.
No, let's not get carried away now. Just a smidge.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge. But why not? Why not? Say, yep, we're taking Paul Martin out because we have 3 games in 5 nights. They're on the road, and time to get DeMello or Heat or whoever that 7 is some minutes. And you're going to manage him because, once again, no matter what you feel about the Sharks this season, they're going to be measured on the postseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, look at and the only thing I think like with Joachim Ryan's contract, I think he's going to get a good look in camp, but I feel like he's Barracuda bound next season just because he has that extra 2 years on the 2-year two-way. So I feel like he's probably Barracuda bound, but he should be the first call up, I think, if an injury is to take place. Zach, are you with me on that or?
Completely, especially with Mirko Mueller shipped off.
Yeah.
There's no former first-round pick to coddle emotionally any longer there for the Sharks, which I think that's what they were doing with the call-ups of Mueller.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it. We all watched an absolute ton of Barracuda games, and Mueller was not the best defender on his pairing.
Oh.
So now you can truly call up based on merit, and it would be, as big of a fan as I am of Jacob Middleton and some of these other players, whoever loses out for the race for the 6-7 spots, that's going to be the Barracuda's number one guy. He better be ready to play 30 minutes a night.
I agree, and I think I'm excited to see what Bergman ends up being now, because I feel like with him unshackled from Mirko Mueller, it's a make or break season for Julius Bergman.
Might be a little
not
early
a make or break. Okay,
yeah,
make or break a little bit, but I think we'll have a much better idea of what he is.
It is certainly a very important year in his progression,
right?
And so if he can get a dependable, smart pairing guy that can help him utilize his strengths as opposed to him constantly second guessing what his partner's doing, we'll be able to hopefully get some of that confidence going. And I think we saw that in the postseason. I thought we saw a different Bergman in the postseason for the Barracuda than we did during the regular season. But that's going to be a really interesting development for the Sharks prospects.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see. All right, so let's move on, because obviously we had some just a silly amount of trades today, which was really the whole reason why we were like, yeah, we can go on tonight. We got trades and signings. I have it listed as trade sanity, but there's some signings too. Let's start with Edmonton and signing Chris Russell to 4 years for $16 million front loaded, because I mean, look, I mean, I guess it's a good deal since he's basically Mark Edward Vlasic according to the Edmonton media, right?
Corsi darling Chris Russell to you.
Corsi darling Chris Russell to you.
Just ask Drew Weber about Chris Russell's advanced analytics.
There was an article, I can't remember which publication it was in, but it basically tried to compare Chris Russell to Mark Edward Vlasic in a positive way. This is Zach shaking his head for those that are not watching on the YouTube stream.
The English language doesn't have words to express my disappointment and disbelief in that comparison. I don't know enough Latin.
All right. So yeah, obviously, look, it's funny because I made this comment earlier about like how it's like, but don't worry, because he has Connor McDavid on his team, Peter Chiarelli is going to be a candidate for GM of the year again next year. Jeez Louise. I mean, look, I like their pick in the first round. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of the signing Chiarelli has done so far, like I think that Lucic deal is going to look really bad when it's over, and this deal not good.
See, and this is kind of going back in time a little bit and playing the what if game. But if you'll recall last year when we were talking about the 2016 draft, I had the Edmonton Oilers taking Matt Tkachuk. Now, could you imagine Matt Tkachuk instead of a Milan Lucic? I think that would make for a very interesting lineup.
Yeah.
Saves you some money for when you inevitably have to back the truck up to McDavid and Draisaitl.
Back the truck up. He's just going to get the whole fleet.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like he might be the first player that actually gets a blank check.
It's very possible.
I mean, really and truly, it's like just add zeros until your hand cramps, and we'll call it good.
I saw a tweet that said that Connor McDavid's asking price was the maximum for just $14 million.
See, that's humble of him because I would also ask for an ownership stake. I'm like, I want 14 million and 12.5% of your club.
That's interesting because it kind of brings us into like something we're talking about next. So, but here's the problem with that. Like, do you want to make a lot of money or do you want to win? Because I think when you look at some of the trades we saw today, these are because of guys taking too big of chunks of their team's overall draft money. I'm not saying Connor McDavid isn't worth it. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, when you see like Chicago today, they sent Hjalmarsson to Arizona for Dolphin and Murphy. You know, not that it saved them a ton of money. You know, they saved them a little bit of money so they could go get Brandon Saad back for Panarin and Mott. Like, I don't, you know, these deals are because Kane and Taves are taking up too much of that salary cap structure.
And now is time for Vince G's creation, Blackhawk Down on
Blackhawk Down. Like, I don't know. I mean, go ahead.
Those two combined for 21. Connor McDavid is. I mean, you wouldn't trade Connor McDavid for Taves and Kane.
No, you're right.
No.
So signing Connor McDavid to 14 million actually saves you 7 million, so that you can waste it on Chris Russell.
That's true.
Keep in mind too, Leon Draisaitl is a restricted free agent.
Yeah, he's not going to ring the bell that hard. Like Draisaitl's
don't
going
think?
he's not
I think
ringing
he
the
does.
bell that hard.
Yeah, I'm with Jerk on this one, Ian.
Oh, well, he's going to ring the bell, but he's not they're not making 14 million each. Is what I'm saying.
No, but
Draisaitl's going to get like 6 easily.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that 7 million that they theoretically save, according to Zach, is going to Leon Draisaitl's pocket.
Oh yeah, I know, and that wouldn't surprise me either. And it would be money well spent. Don't get me wrong. It just makes me. If I'm, and I don't care. I don't want Edmonton to be good because they're in our division. But it's
too late for that. Edmonton's already good.
I know. But if they can hamstring themselves with all the money to Connor McDavid, I don't know why I'm arguing this. This could be a good thing for everyone.
You know who's due for a nice lucrative contract? Cody Franzen.
That's so true.
Just send him to the Oilers too.
But I mean, I look at, you look at what? Like, let's look at what's Crosby making?
I think just a hair under 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, like that, like it's still a lot of money, but there's still money to go around.
And you know what? That's what I've said it before on many shows, and I've said it on Twitter too. As Kane and Taves, you have 3 Stanley Cups. How do you not say, let's take a discount and keep the good times rolling? I think it's incredibly selfish of them to have taken $10.5 million because now they're having to trade a legitimate scorer in Artemi Panarin. They had to trade Patrick Sharp. They had to trade Brandon Saad and Andrew Shaw, Scott Darling, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, Dustin Byfuglien. Should I go on? Andrew Ladd.
Andrew Ladd twice, right?
Twice.
Yeah, Andrew Ladd twice. Chris Versteeg twice.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't like if you want to win, like I'm not saying Connor McDavid isn't worth the money, but if you want to win Stanley Cups, then you need a supporting cast. This isn't the NBA. One player doesn't win a Stanley Cup. Otherwise, Gretzky would have won all the Stanley Cups. Just all of them. Just his Stanley Cup the whole time. Like, it's just not the way the NHL works. So it just, to me, like, I get that you want to, obviously, that he deserves to get paid. I just think, like, if you want to win, though, I mean, you have to, it's salary cap league, man. You never know what the cap's going to do. You don't want to send good players out of town. I think the Blackhawks, yeah, they've got 3 cups, so it's hard to really criticize the Blackhawks because they won. But still, now they're paying for it. And, Connor McDavid hasn't won a Stanley Cup yet. So at least when Kane and Taves signed their deals, they had won Stanley Cup. They had already won. Like, Connor McDavid hasn't won yet. And why would you, before winning once, why would you want to hamstring your whole cap structure? I guess that's my random whatever of the day.
Fair point.
So I don't know. It's interesting because, like, I look at this the Chicago situation here. I mean, apparently, Saad. You could argue that Taves hasn't been the same since Saad left, and I think getting Saad back has more to do. I think Kane's fine. I think Kane can play with anyone and probably still put up points. Like, I know with Panarin there, he put up a lot of points. But I think I'm interested to see if Saad's back because of the drop off we've seen in Jonathan Toews.
Well, a lot of reports had him saying that, you know, Kane and Toews both said how much they missed him in the locker room. I just don't know if that's what you ship out of town. I mean, you're making $10.5 million.
Yeah.
You know, buck up.
I'm sad that the guy that, yeah, and that's exactly it. Like you're you know, it kind of goes back to my point. You're letting guys go because you can't afford them anymore because you're making too much money. Like I just, you know, those deals, I mean, don't get me wrong. Look at 3 Stanley Cups later. It's hard to really, you know, go out and judge Chicago. And I thought, you know, again, Chicago, I thought they did good with their pick today. You know, there's still a lot of things to like with that organization. But man, the sacrifices they've had to make for that cap is just, I don't think they're going to be that good next year, to be completely honest.
Well, and you know what? Therein lies another problem, because how can you justify paying a guy $10.5 million when he only scores at an elite level with one specific line mate?
And even then.
Yeah, and even then. Like, oh, he scored 60 points. That's nice. Call me when you score 100.
Yeah, for $10.5 million, you better be, you know, a darn near a point per game player in the NHL.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Kane, look at Kane.
And that's about what Kane is.
Yeah. I mean, Kane's really like grown into that deal. Like, I don't mind Kane at that deal at all. I think he's absolutely worth every penny at that deal. With the way his production's been the last couple of years. But I mean, Toews, I love Jonathan Toews, and I've made no bones about that. But he's not a $10 million player in the NHL. He's just not.
No, definitely not.
Some of the other trades we saw today, now that we've danced all over the Blackhawks' grave next year because they're not going anywhere. The Oilers sent Jordan Eberle off to the island for Ryan Strome. Straight up.
It's a project for a project.
Yeah, I'm not not huge on that one way or the other. I don't mind it. It's a project for a project.
I think, but Eberle's got a little more of a track record than Strome does at this point, no?
That is fair to say, and you could argue that John Tavares finally has a goal scorer to play with, but, you know, when he's gone next year, it's not really going to matter. And, you know, with Ryan Strome, you have a guy who couldn't really hack it at center, and so they put him on the wing, and he's been okay, but he hasn't been a 30-goal scorer.
Yeah, and project was probably the wrong word for me. You know, it's Eberle. I mean, he's played in 500 games and he's put up points, but it always seems to be like he seems to be a problem with every roster.
Right.
Like, where do you put him? What does he do? You know, his sophomore year was stupendous, and it's just getting back to that. But, you know, I think the trouble there is he's just slowly ticking down.
And he's making a ton of money.
Right. So maybe it's a problem for a project.
Yeah, that might be fair. I mean, it's just interesting to me though, because like it's like the second year in a row. And look at, maybe this will work out, but I think like I know, like I was talking to a couple of guys that I talk to all the time, and you know, and we talked to Ryan Strome came up one time, and I said, you know, that's a guy that I would look at, but not, you know, would never give up anything for him. Like you would give up, you know, like I think we were talking about guys that, you know, you might be able to get with like a Tommy Wingels plus, and Ryan Strome came up.
Right. And
so I mean, it's just like to give up Eberle for him. I mean, it seems like it's just like another, it seems one-sided. Maybe it won't be, maybe it'll be fine. But I mean, I just think it's a lot for Ryan Strome, who hasn't really done anything. Whereas at least Eberle has done stuff. But Strome's never done anything.
Yeah,
that's fair. It's one of those things though, where, you know, Eberle's kind of been on the downslide for the last 2 or 3 seasons. And so if you're in the Islanders position, you know, you have that leverage to where you can be like, hey, you don't want this guy, so we're going to give you crap for him and you're going to deal with it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, look, the Oilers had to do something. They absolutely had to do something. They had to move either Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or Jordan Eberle. one of those guys had to go. So, and when teams know that you're going to get, that you need to get rid of a guy, then you're going to get pennies on the dollar. That's just how it is. That's the NHL.
I still think they try to get rid of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, honestly. I think the long term
RNH goes, eh?
I think the long-term goal is to have Leon Draisaitl play center.
Oh, that's where I'd want him.
Yeah.
At some point.
You're not going to pay your third-line center $6 million. I mean, it doesn't come as a surprise because this is a Peter Chiarelli team, but at the same time, that's not, good for longevity,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's interesting, because I feel like although again Ryan Nugent-Hopkins makes a pretty penny as well as last I checked, but man, I still think if you went Crosby, McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins down the middle and just found wings, like, geez, that's a scary.
And that's creates another problem, and is because Edmonton wasn't really fruitful on the wings to begin with, which is why they were forced to put Draisaitl with. I mean, it's a total Todd McCullough, package.
Mm-hmm.
You load it up because the depth down the middle thing isn't working out.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, what else do I have on these wonderful notes of mine? The Arizona Coyotes made a trade with the New York Rangers today. They acquired Derek Stepan and Antti Ranta from the New York Rangers for a 2017 first, and the defenseman Anthony DeAngelo, who has been on 3 teams in the last calendar year.
I like the trade for both sides. I think Arizona has been playing this game too long of like, oh, we're rebuilding, we're gathering up picks and prospects. I think Arizona needs to start making some noise before they get run out of the desert. And so you see they acquire a top 6 center, which they needed. They acquire a number 1 goalie, which they needed. And so it's good on that front. And you look at it from the Rangers side, they haven't had a first-round pick since 2012, and then they had 2 this year. And I'm fairly certain they got good picks with both of those guys. I don't remember off the top of my head who they picked. And then Anthony DeAngelo, yes, he's been on 3 different teams in the last year. And when he left Tampa Bay, there were, attitude problems and that sort of thing. But I still think that he's a legitimate D prospect. And it's curious to see where he can grow to when he's not stuck behind, a Chychrun and an OEL and a Goligoski. I absolutely think DeAngelo plays in the NHL next year, full time.
I think DeAngelo is better suited for the East Coast game anyway. I think that's a really good landing spot for him. Lias Andersson, who pretty much that's what this turned out for, right? It's
right. Yeah.
New York took Lias Andersson with the 7th overall pick. Anderson, I watched a lot with HV71. He is NHL ready. He's a player that could make the jump. I don't think he will, but he just plays a mature game. He's played and produced against men. Probably one of the more versatile players available in this draft as well. He's a natural center, but is completely comfortable at wing. I think it's I was seeing some Ranger fans, saying, "Oh, I can't believe, what's going on? Why did we do this?" Anderson for me was a top 10 player, and once Glass was gone there, maybe Nikas, Martin Nikas, I think might be a little bit more dynamic, but Lias Anderson, I think, has as high an NHL certainty as anybody in this draft. So I don't mind, picking a guy that actually is a good 2C, right there. DeAngelo, I like there. And then for Stepan, he's not a number 1 center, but you have Clayton Keller out there.
Yep.
That's who you're banking on. You have, Strong. You've got guys that you have penciling in up there. Derek Stepan has consistently put up on New York Ranger teams that have no idea what direction they're going.
Yeah.
No clue. You can pencil him in for 50 points. No problem. So, you got to give to get. Antti Ranta, I think, I think there might have been better, I don't know. Goaltending is so hard, and it varies year to year. It's a ping pong ball, and we'll have to see. But I think that it at least is not a step backwards from Mike Smith.
I don't think so either.
And I think the Coyotes turn into a power. With all their youngsters getting a year older, some of these trades that they've made to add pieces. You haven't lost anything in net. You've added some center depth. You picked up, you had to lose Elias Anderson's type player, but boy, I really like what's going on out there in the desert.
Yeah, I was kind of nervous at first because, you'd like the first news was like, okay, the owner just bought everyone else out, so now he's in charge. And then all these like just crazy things happened after that, right? Like, I mean, Shane Doan not being told to come back. I mean, that's not really crazy when you think about it, but it was surprising after all this time, I think. And, I'm not saying it was a bad thing. It was surprising, and then they moved Mike Smith, which I'm fine with. I think Mike Smith is only good against the Sharks. That he's just kind of okay. And then Dave Tippett getting fired kind of was out of left field because they just signed him to that huge extension and gave him that, vice president of hockey ops position and everything else. So I thought that was a little out of left field, but after everything that happened today, like I'm totally on board with what the Coyotes are doing. I think Scheik is a wizard for one. I think, I like this trade a lot. And it was funny because I was reading like a lot of some media up here and they were the takes were kind of just really ridiculous. Like, oh, well, this team should be rebuilding, not adding things. And it's kind of like, no, this team needs to do something. This team has plenty in the pipeline that needs to mature and come up. They need things to mature and come up around. And and getting some of the guys that they got today, I mean, that's going to help them out. I think, Hjalmarsson's a legit defenseman. And they didn't really give up much to get him. And I love Nicholas Hjalmarsson. So, I really like what's going on in the desert and don't like what's going on in San Jose.
Well, now we have to say Eastern Desert because of the Western Desert would be Vegas.
That's true. Hockey Jerk, what's your take on the Coyotes?
Well, I was just going to say, it's funny that, as it stands right now, you're saying that you like what's coming out of the desert when 24 hours ago, I know you and myself and a lot of others were like, what the hell is happening in the desert? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's crazy how things can change. But, as Teal Town After Dark member AJ Strong will tell you, I am an idiot for saying the Coyotes were legit this past year. But you know what? I'm going to say it again. I think they have a legitimate chance to build on the last two seasons. They lose a guy like in Lauren Dauphin, who is an okay player, but you know what? They have, like Zach said, they have Clayton Keller coming up, Dylan Strome. I'm a big fan of Brendan Pierlini.
Yes.
They have
good goal
Christian
scorer.
Dvorak. Yeah, great goal scorer. Christian Dvorak, Christian Fisher, Anthony Duclair, if he figures it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then even then, the guys they have now, Max Domi. I know I'm forgetting like 10 million guys under the age of 22, but the point is that Arizona is moving in the right direction. And like I said, a couple minutes ago, they have a top 6 center now. They have a number 1 goalie.
Yep.
And that defensive core looks good. I mean, you have OEL and Chikrin and Goligoski and Hjalmarsson, and then you can put Luke Shen with literally a warm body, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting.
And then they've got Kyle Wood, down there, who is, a couple seasons of a good skating coach away from being just a monster.
Right.
I think he's the biggest player I saw in the AHL last year after that Auger guy for Ontario. Kyle Wood, once he figures out his skating, you've got to slot him in there too. They've got the pieces. I think they're a power. I really do. I think Antti Ranta is at least I know the advanced stat folks, and when you start talking about high danger, medium danger, all those types of things, Mike Smith was a gamer.
Oh yeah.
And I think that Antti Ranta maybe technically might be a step forward. I feel like in goal they're at least treading water, if not slightly better. All the defense that Hockey Jerk just mentioned, The youth infusion there is just ridiculous. I think this is a team that is threatening.
There was portions of the season where I think, because you said about the analytics for Ranta, but there was portions of the season where Ranta stole the net from Lundqvist last year.
Right. No, and Antti Ranta is a guy that I've followed since his time in Europe, so I'm familiar with him, and I think he has the capability to be a starting netminder in the NHL. So, this is when did he make the jump? 2012, right? Over here, 12 or 13.
12, 13, something like that. Yeah.
I was excited as all get out when he came over. So I'm a big believer in Antti Ranta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, man. I think that the Pacific's not going to be the same division it was last year, where it was kind of just like, wow, the Sharks are way out in the lead because everyone else is doing terrible. I don't think that's going to happen again this year. Couple of free agent signings, and then we should probably get the heck out of here. TJ Oshie, 8 years, $46 million, 5.75 AAV in Washington. I think it's too long, but 5.7 I don't think is terrible for Oshie.
Yeah, the dollar amount is nice considering his 2 years in the Capital. He's, consistently put up more points than he ever did when he was on St. Louis. And the years are a little long, but I still think that dollar is nice and low to where you can bring in another piece. And then, at the same time, I think this TJ Oshie extension pretty much seals the fate for, Justin Williams and Carl Alsner, which shouldn't come as a surprise, but I think at this point makes it unofficially official that they're both going to be gone come July 1.
Well, Justin Williams did say he had no memories that were good of Washington, so.
Yeah. He lost his first Game 7. He should just retire.
That's true. That's true. Zach, what do you think of the Oshie deal? Is that for term, or is that for money? Is that for everything?
Everything.
Oh, everything. I like. All right.
His shooting percentage was over the moon. It's going to regress. What are you thinking? Let alone doing? Oh.
Wouldn't it be nice if they played the shootout in playoffs?
Yeah. Or maybe just instead of the first and second periods.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Washington's just. I truly don't know. 5.75 per year, okay, if you're on a 3-year deal with TJ Oshie. Mm-hmm. On an 8-year, that's a max term.
It's a max term deal.
He's 30.
Yeah, I don't like the term at all. And for those that are listening on the audio stream, Zach hit himself in the head with his own microphone.
That's, Washington should have been hitting themselves. I don't. That deal makes Chris Russell's deal look sane. It really does. It really does. Yeah. I don't get it whatsoever.
I got nothing. As far as the term goes, I dislike the term. Greatly dislike the term.
And you could argue that since coming from St. Louis to Washington, Oshie has completely changed the type of player he is, and he scores more points than he did when he was on St. Louis. But like Zach said, he's 30. So by the end of this deal, he's going to be 38, which is, as we've seen with Thornton and Marleau, that's not young. So
last year, TJ Oshie scored goals on 23.1% of all of his shots. His career average is 13.4. His 7 years in St. Louis was 11.8. I got bad news for you, kids. I got bad news for you. What's he going to do? Quick, get it to TJ Oshie. He needs to shoot more. Don't give it to Ovechkin.
Good time.
I know. And I'm not a hot take person. That's not me. And this signing, I just come unglued. I'm off the rails. Come on, fire another one. I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. How about the Ducks extending Patrick Eaves for 3 years at $3.15 million per?
What do you think, Jerk?
I absolutely love this signing. I think Eves fit in really well with the Ducks. I think he provided some goal scoring they desperately needed. And it's such a low contract. It's a movable contract if you get into trouble. And you know, we've seen, I think Eves scored 21 goals with Dallas, and we've seen trade deadline acquisitions go quiet once they get to their new team. But Eves scored 11 goals with the Ducks in the regular season. So there's something to hang your hat on for sure. And like I said, the contract is definitely movable. So at worst, you bite the bullet and move it. And at best, you have a 25 goal scorer making less than $4 million, which seems to be their theme because they also have this little nugget called Ricard Raquel, who's pretty much doing the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
As all the loyal readers of Teal Town, USA will know, Patrick Eves was one of my draft targets for the San Jose Sharks. Absolutely love this signing for the Ducks. Completely echo what Hockey Jerk just said. You know, scoring goals is how you keep score in the NHL, and Patrick Eves seems to be pretty darn good at it. You know, his shooting percentage last year was at 15.3, since we're going to harp on that a little bit. Still managed 32 goals. Just really, really like the signing. Good dollar amount, good term. I think it's just a heck of a signing by Dallas, the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, I can't
like Dallas would sign him to that. They need another goalie.
That's true. They probably don't have enough. I can't add to anything to there, so I'm not going to. A couple trades from the draft floor tonight. I know I got these all in order. That's fine. Pittsburgh acquires Ryan Reeves. Sorry. And number 57 for Oscar Sundqvist and the number 31 pick from the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, I don't understand this move. Like, for starters, like, I laughed literally out loud when I saw St. Louis's protection list, and now I just continue laughing. What am I missing in Ryan Reeves here, guys, that can net you a first-round pick?
I don't think we'll ever know, because whatever he has on the front office over there, it's got to be good, and it's got to be a felony.
I think he was instrumental in the conspiracy to have Ken Hitchcock removed.
Ryan Reeves, those where the bodies are buried. I don't understand it. Like, Pittsburgh has done basically, look at Pittsburgh. This is a talented team. This is a back-to-back Stanley Cup winner, and they've done it because everyone is useful for the most part in their lineup. You know, they can get scoring from just about anywhere in their lineup. And then to bring a guy like Ryan Reeves into what I guess we need to protect Crosby and Malkin suddenly. Like, you won 2 Stanley Cups without this. I mean, this isn't to say that Pittsburgh hasn't employed these kind of players in the regular season. They most certainly have.
But,
yes. Or, you know, even more like Sestito more recently. But, you know, when it comes to the playoffs, I don't know. These guys generally go away, so they'll probably be smart and move them away again. I don't get it. You have a successful team where you win, and then you would just kind of do something like that to it. I don't understand it. I never looked at Pittsburgh and said, you know, if they could just hit people a little bit harder, they'd be okay. Like, no, they're winning Stanley Cups. They're fine.
And they moved Oscar Sundqvist too, who's a nice little piece as well.
Yeah. I don't. Go ahead.
No.
I got nothing. Good. I'm good.
Oscar Sundqvist, good little prospect. Still has some upside. I really like who St. Louis picked with 31 and Klim Kostin. I had him as 33. Russian factor alarms going off through the roof when my final rankings came out. But he said something really interesting, that he wants no part of the KHL next year. He's ready for the NHL or the AHL. Mm-hmm. So no Valery Nichushkin, you know, crazy, oh, I'm in the NHL, I'm an NHLer, and if not, I'll do whatever I want. You know, right. Klim Kostin knows that he's got to prove that he's over all these crazy health issues, that the flags that are there. He's one of those guys, it's going to be a boomer bust pick. But I really like, I mean, Ryan Reeves in a late second for a guy that could be a 475-foot home run in Klim Kostin, and then Oscar Sundqvist, who still has, legitimate prospect ability, that could impact your roster. That's just a great trade. And it's a great pick. I like it where it's like, yeah, we trade a face puncher in a late second for a guy that could be on the wing with Vladimir Tarasenko, who will help ease the transition for Klim Kostin to North America.
Yeah.
What a fantastic deal. Fantastic. Love it.
And then and St. Louis was just on a roll tonight on the draft floor dealing around here. They also get Braden Shen from the Philadelphia Flyers, and they move Litera, and what else did they move here? I lost my page.
2017 first and a conditional 2018 first.
Yeah, for Braden Shen. That's insanity.
Yeah, I don't love that nearly as much.
Yeah.
See,
yeah.
And here's the thing: is I'm a fan of Braden Shen. I think he's definitely a clutch goal scorer, and I think he is a top 6 center that St. Louis has been looking for the longest time. But if you look at Braden Shen's stats from the last 2 years, he makes his money on the power play. And so I would really be concerned about his 5 versus 5 play.
But Litera was such an anchor on that St. Louis team the last couple of years. Like I understand like you had to move something to get, the picks had to watch that moving Litera the other way down.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think the goal was just to get a top 6 center, and I think St. Louis is kind of like, we'll figure it out later. I think that's what they're going for.
I just think it was a steep price. I mean, I'm a big fan of the 2018 draft. I think that's where you should be amassing picks, not moving them, especially not first round picks. You never know what happens. You never know. And
that kind of brings me to another question I forgot about when we were on Vegas. Is that for all the futures that they gone in on, they have a ton of picks. I think they have 3 more picks in the second round and then a bunch more picks. But next year's draft, I mean, not that they're not going to be able to get picks for the 2018 draft because they have guys to move. But I was surprised how little they have right now in the 2018 draft.
I thought they would have done more. And there's still a lot of players to move. I think 2018, that's going to be a year that if you're going to start a rebuild or try to get, if your team's out of contention and you've got a key player hurt, something like that, that's where you get into the lottery.
Yeah.
If you're not a true contender in 2018 or this upcoming season, you're going to get into that lottery.
That's true.
You have to.
And something to point out, too, that 2018 pick is lottery protected. So if St. Louis, misses the playoffs in their lottery, they would end up giving Philadelphia their 2019 first-round pick. But another facet of that condition is that if they defer the first to 2019, then they also have to give up a third in 2020.
Well, there you go. See? This is why I keep you guys around. Yeah, all right. Maybe this isn't such a great move after all. I think getting rid of Litera was a huge thing for them.
Yeah, they I know they didn't like their contract or his contract. That was, the big thing, allegedly.
Right. All right, guys. Well, I think we've done some work tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. Probably around the same time that we started tonight. We're going to break down the whole draft. We're going to go more into a little more depth onto whoever the Sharks have in the cupboard when this is all said and done. And we'll talk about some other draft stuff too, and anything else that happens over the next 24 hours. So definitely come back for that. Zach, it was awesome having you back on the show again. Any final thoughts?
None. Thanks for having me. It was fun to break down the first round. Nico Hischier goes first overall. Zero surprise. It's been foreseen. And I guys that I like so far, real quick. I'm big fan of Nico. He was my number one. Elias Pettersson. I was listening to TSN 1040. for the draft, and they were going, "That's off the board."
Mm-hmm.
Pedersen was my number 3. He was the best player available, and it's a position of need. Shut up. You got the best player. He just needs a bunch of T-bone steak dinners.
Yeah,
he'll be fine. He's going to be
eat
excellent.
something.
Kalen Foote was a bit of a surprise. I know he comes out of the defenseman factory that also is known as Kelowna.
Yes.
I just think that was a little bit early. Liljegren to Toronto, I think that Liljegren has Oliver Shillington 2.0 all over it for me. Yamamoto to the Oilers, that's going to haunt everybody in the Western Conference. Tolvanen at 30 and Kostin at 31. Two of the more dynamic players. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerk, any final thoughts from you, good sir?
So final thought, Yamamoto to the Oilers is awful. Though
you don't even sound sad. I mean, you sound legitimately like just beside yourself on that.
I have been wanting the Sharks to draft Yamamoto since like the beginning of this season, and I was so sure they were going to do it, and I'm like pissed that they haven't. Like, I'm getting flashbacks to when the Sharks passed on Matt Barzal, to be honest, and like I always say, could have had.
Who's your best player still available?
Oh man,
or even a couple.
That's hard to say. I would really have to look at the list of still available. I don't know. I think at this point, I feel like at this point it's pretty much pick a name out of a hat with a few exceptions.
See, I still have my top guys. I've still got Robin Salo from Boston Sport and Jared Anderson Dolan, who was the center for Kailer Yamamoto.
Yes, Anderson Dolan is who I was thinking of. I knew it was somebody with a hyphenated name.
All right. As for me, I'm Ian Reed. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. Always love to answer all your questions and whatnot. Obviously, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, check us out on our audio stream, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, all the usual stuff. My final thought is that Doug Wilson, you've let me down again in the first round, and I don't like it. But here's to 3 Joe Pavelskis tomorrow. Have a good night, guys.